Screenless. Jane Spencer, illustrator, t-shirt designer, t-shirt printer. Welcome to Creative Cuppa.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here.
You're very welcome. Let's go back to the beginning then. How did you get into illustration in the first place? What was life like back then?
It was quite a long time ago. I actually trained as a graphic designer, more or less directly from school. I really early on knew that I wanted to go into that line of work. And I did qualify and I did launch myself, into the world. I think I graduated in 87. And I had a great job in Covent Garden. I was really living a very fun life working in the studio as a junior. And then I got that itch, the first job frustrations that you're not moving along as quickly as you'd like. Despite the fact that I was definitely, looking back on it, I was definitely in a really great job with some really great people. And I just left. I just thought, it's going to be easier.
Well, you just up sticks, gone.
I did. I guess it wasn't a very wise thing to do. But I think you sort of feel bulletproof at that age. And it worked out. It worked out fine. So I took a job. I took a freelance illustration job just to tide me over. And it happened to be for a pretty happening agency at the time, which is, I think it was Manali Tattersfield. They were really lovely. And there was just no turning back. It seemed, I sort of ended up by accident.
You had the bug.
It was doing it. It was also, I think the bug part of it was partly the work, but it was also partly the buzz of landing a freelance job. It was really fun to go, I used to bike around London, go and kind of pitch for work. And it, with a portfolio, it was all free.
Under the arm.
Yeah. Well, in a really grotty dispatch bag, actually.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Before I knew, I built a freelance career, and I would always have a studio space, because one of the things that I wanted was, the only vision I had was that I would be working in a studio with other designers at that age, and I did manage that. So I would always rent desk space with a bunch of other people, illustrators, designers, or whatever, and that was a really nice environment.
Yeah, I bet to kind of spark ideas. And did you collaborate with them, or was it just more to be around other creative people?
A bit of both. I mean, there were a couple of times when I was really lucky. I definitely have had a lot of luck. And I would be a kind of in-house illustrator in a design company. So, yeah, that happened a couple of times. But for long stretches, I would just be in a nice big space with a bunch of other people. And even things like exchanging music, listening to each other's music choices, stuff like that was really valuable. And certainly getting out of your home space and working in a shared space was really nice. Yeah.
You moved then from illustration into screen printing, and I've seen before that it was through a need to diversify, and that editorial fees were stalling. You had a young family. Why screen printing particularly? How did you get started?
That really was, I caught a bug. Yeah, I did it was a kind of a weekend course, I think, when I was living in Brighton, and I loved it. I just really loved the process, and it wasn't something that I moved into straight away. I was doing it for a long time as a hobby. But I was living in Liverpool at one point, and as you described, the freelance work was drying up a bit. I think I'd slightly lost my mojo as well on the illustration side. There was a lot of other stuff going on in my life, but I was very distracted by the screen printing, and so I just went with it. And I just thought, right, I really want to make this my job now. And it was a case of finding a way of making that my job. So the screen printing business that I'm running now is not the first iteration of that, but I got there eventually.
You moved to Folkestone in 2012.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say that you're a fan of the place.
Yeah.
What do you love about it?
It's one of those places that it's got a lot going for it, obviously, but it's also got a sense of a place being built, and it's very grassroots, and it's really nice to be part of that. So you kind of get the feel here that a lot of things are possible, and that there's a way to go. We're not there yet, but it's got momentum. There's a feeling around that things are happening here.
Yes, it seems like a very optimistic place creatively.
Sure.
People have the will to do things and to get together and to make things happen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't claim to have been a big part of anything ambitious that's happening here, but it's just, sometimes it's just nice to know that it's going on.
Well, I suppose if you go back to your days of the shared space, it's a little bit like that, isn't it? Just being around other creative people is often enough to be inspired and
sure
to carry on. Talking of your screen printing, you set up a company called Hound, which is screen printing T-shirts. And is it other illustration designs as well, or are you focusing on T-shirts?
Hound initially was a little bit more upmarket, and I wasn't doing T-shirts. I was making, it was more of a textiles, more of a kind of gallery-based business. And I was creating some very nice cushions and scarves, and they had a great look, and there was a very distinctive and successful aesthetic, but unfortunately they didn't sell.
Right,
so I got an exhibition, I got featured on magazine covers, I was starting to build some traction, but the sales just weren't there, and I needed this, the promise that I'd made to myself, and let's get real here. I had to make it sustainable financially, and so quite accidentally I veered a little bit and did some T-shirts, and I happened to have an interview, a very quick fire, almost like speed dating setup with Not on the High Street, and do you know the online? It's an online.
Yeah.
It's huge,
yeah, they've been
actually.
around a long time, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
Yeah.
So they saw all my work and said, "Yeah, this is lovely. This is lovely, but we can't sell it. It's not really our bag." And then, literally, pretty much as I was packing the stuff away, saw the T-shirts and said, "Let's see those." I think I had 3, and they encouraged me to create a collection. And straight away, the shop went up. It's quite quick once you get the go-ahead, and that became a really successful medium almost.
Yeah.
And so my work has now I'm fulfilling these, you have to come up with collections, and I'm doing that. And I feel like I've got the wind in my sails now, and that's going really well. And it's got quite a strong aesthetic of its own. So the original T-shirts I created were with my husband in mind, and he's a guy who likes to do a little bit of sport and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's pretty sort of among he and his friends. I can ping off all of those ideas, all of those things that they enjoy, and reflect those in the designs. So they're quite graphic, they're quite minimalist. Some of them are quite minimalist and thoughtful, and they don't have logos on them. They're not busy.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, having seen your website, it doesn't seem to be a normal T-shirt printing company. You can go online and say, "Oh, I want that design," and get it printed. But you come up with all the designs yourself. It's kind of a collision of your illustration world and your screen printing world, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is.
Would you say that's part of your unique selling point as a company?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's almost like an artisan product, because I'm printing it myself, and the scale of it is very small at the moment. To be honest, I'm making changes, and the 21 collection is going to be produced outside of my studio, just because I have to scale up, and that's how you do it. But it's still going to be printed in the UK, and I'm checking out all of the ethics and making sure I get all of that right. So yeah, it's almost like an artisan loaf.
Yeah. Like it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. If people want to go and buy one of your t-shirts, where can they go?
I'm sell on different platforms, but my own website, which would be really nice to get a few people to look more directly, is sight, S-I-G-H-T, -hound.co.uk.
Fantastic. And of course, you've got an Instagram feed as well where you show off lots of your designs. And I noticed an illustration Instagram.
Yeah.
Where you have your own kind of illustrations that you put up
there. I do. I'm a big Instagram user, and I really enjoy it. I was always a massive magazine fiend when I was younger, and Instagram kind of feels like, just the best magazine if you can curate that well. Yeah. And so my Sighthound account is Sighthound Original on Instagram. But yes, recently I've relaunched my illustration website, which is janespencer.com. And I've got an Instagram for that as well, which is Illustration Noodles.
Fantastic.
And I think just having some time away from the illustration, sort of slightly enforced, has really fired up my, sort of imagination. And I've gone back to it with so much enthusiasm and energy. And I've actually started to pick up more illustration commissions.
It does seem that throughout your screen printing time, the illustration didn't really go away, did it? It's a very big part of it anyway. They inhabit your world quite equally, I think.
Thank you. It's always interesting to know, is there a connection? Do you see a connection?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at one of your T-shirts, you would say, "Oh, there is an illustration on the front." So
sure, yeah, they're very graphic on the T-shirts. But they, it's the same sort of sensibility, probably. Yeah.
Well, I encourage everybody to go and buy one of your T-shirts from the Sighthound website. All the links will be in the show notes, so you can go directly from there. But for now, Jane Spencer, thank you ever so much for joining me for a cuppa.
Thank you.